folks, so this is the Edge Loops lecture, Maya 3. So today, much like Extrude, we're talking about another tool that is responsible for making, not necessarily new in the same sense as Extrude, where you are pulling something out of your geometry. This is taking your existing geometry and cutting it up into finer pieces. So that way you have more faces to work with, which means you can put more detail into your model, right? So if we pop back over into Maya, here's a cube, frame that up, mesh tools, insert edge loop tool, click on that, and then it's just clicking and dragging on an edge, adds a new loop. So yesterday we were adding them from the subdivisions, and that adds them only at the start, and it adds them equally spaced. This is how you can manually, cut things up, since this is now like 1/3 by 2/3 ish, so to speak. And one thing to point out, folks, if you click on the face, it's not going to cut. You have to click on one of the edges to cut in a new edge loop. So it will cut them perpendicular to the point you're dragging along. So this horizontal edge, dragging on it will make a vertical loop. Now, hopefully this makes sense to you mathematically. Under the settings for the tool, which I'll show you how to get to the tool settings in a second, you can also enable multiple edge loops. So these create evenly spaced multiple edge loops in one click. So by default, you can see I'm dragging one edge in at a time. Here I can set it so that when I click it, it puts in 4. It'll evenly space them out based on whatever this number is. But as a note, if you put in X loops, you get X plus 1 subdivisions, right? Here I added 4 loops. That creates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subdivisions. So just a minor note about that. So those tool settings, folks, mesh tools, and then you'll see insert edge loop, and then these little options boxes on the right here. Click on those, they'll open up over here. You'll have the tab for tool settings probably over here already also. Or it'll be a little floating window actually. You can nest it in over here if you'd like. But that's how you get to the tool settings, and then again, multiple edge loops, it'll use equidistant whatever it is that you set for that number. When you're all done using it that way, just use the reset button. It does exactly what you think it does. It resets the tool. And then one final thing, because this will come up today, and also something to use with Extrude that I alluded to yesterday, repeat last. If you press G, it'll pull up your last tool. So if you add in an edge loop, you can, so like here, I added an edge loop here, and then I scale this up. Okay, cool. If I press G, now I'm back to my insert edge loop tool. Boom. And then, do whatever with that. G, back to my edge loop tool. Boom. So repeat last. And same thing with Extrude, right? If I have the face selected up here, Q, I'll talk about that in a second. Extrude, but same thing, I could do that. Select this, G, G, and then when you undo it, Command Z, instead it says undo repeat last instead of undo extrude, just as a minor note about that. But the one other thing I forgot to mention, folks, so I'm in face mode, right? I try to go add my edge loops here, and all's well and good. You need to, when you are done with the insert edge loop tool, you need to switch to another tool, okay? And the reason why that is that it will just keep trying to add edges. So you'll see I'll switch into my object mode, and then I'm gonna try and grab this object, I highlight it, and then it's like, oh, you want to add more edges, right? No. So edge loop tool, you should switch to another tool to switch away from it. Usually I just press Q, so it's your select tool, that way you know you're not making any more loops if you click on something accidentally. So again, when you're done adding edge loops, 2 things. Make sure if you use the tool settings, you reset that tool. The other thing is, make sure you switch to another tool when you're done, and that way you can go back to doing whatever it is that you need to do. Okay. So that's the absolute basics of that. Adding in new edges. So again, if I go back to just a basic cube and I add in these edges, it's not changing the geometry's overall silhouette. It's just giving me more ways to affect that or color it or what have you after that. Questions, comments, concerns so far? Sean, what do you got? How do you what? How do you add an edge loop?
Yeah.
So when you have the tool, right? Mesh tools, insert edge loop tool, you click on your object, it'll become highlighted, and then you want to click on and click, hold, and drag on one of the edges, and then it'll show you where it's putting in the edge, and then when you let go, it'll cut that in.
Okay, so it's just like it makes those like divisions.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so let's switch gears. That's the new tool. Let's talk about some new methods of controlling Maya. So control, we'll start off with, is how you can remove things from a selection. It only subtracts from your selection. So if I go in here and I have all the faces on this object selected. Oh, I'm still on my insert edge loop tool. Face, select, boom. So I have these all selected. If I hold control and drag over this, it'll deselect whatever that I drag over. Cool. That's just remove. So control is just remove. So I will now select just this top portion here. And so the next thing on here, which I've added some pictures to help, if you come back to look at the notes, make them make more sense. So shift does both adding and subtracting to your selection, rather. Excuse me. So when you have already selected faces, if you drag over them again while holding shift, you will remove selected faces from your selection while also adding any new faces to that selection. So you can see here on my example, I have this top row of faces selected. I held shift and dragged basically the size of this picture. It gave me the opposite selection. So this is a good way, which this will tie into something we're going to do in a second, but if you have a round object like a cylinder, so you can select all these faces fairly easily using a select range, but you can't select range triangles. We'll talk about that in a second. But so if you ever want to select the top of this, you can just click and drag a box like this, hold control, drag across the middle to deselect. Boom. Now you have all the faces on top. So that's stuff that you'll get more handy with the more you use Maya. I can only show it to you, and you'll get more used to putting that into practice as you work. So again, to get just all these on top, I just dragged a box like this. Boom, selected. Hold control for deselect. Drag a box like this. Deselect. There we go. Boom. So that's using control and shift for some more complex selection. And then, so selecting an edge loop is just a fancy way of doing a select range. It just happens to work only for edges this way. So if you double click an edge quickly, it will select the loop. So if I just go back to here, switch to edge mode, double click this edge, you'll see it gives me the whole loop. All I have to do is double click one edge. It figures out I want the whole loop. You'll notice if I double click a vertical one, it does not go through the center point of this. It does not consider this to be a part of this loop. This technically does loop all the way from the top pole to the bottom pole, but it does not loop all the way around the object. So, quick note on that. Whoops, not zoom. So that is just for edge loops. If you're selecting a range of something that is not just an entire edge loop, If you're doing something less than an entire edge loop, or specifically not an edge or a loop, you will do very similar a select range, which is holding shift and then double clicking. So you can see you set a starting point. In this case, I selected this face, held shift, double clicked over here. So I'm going to take this cylinder that I have here, and I'll just add some subdivisions on this, right? Oh, I broke this object. Okay, hold on. There we go. So if I take in face mode, I can select this face here, shift double click to here, shift double click to here, shift double click. Oh, that will give me an edge ring. And so I didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and undo. And I meant to click here. And so I'll shift double click here, and it's going to be like, hey, you want the whole loop again, buddy? And I'm like, no. So when you're doing these select range things, if you make a mistake with the selection, remember that selection is an action. Just undo, 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 undo. And then so shift click this, shift click it again, shift double click to here, shift double click to here, and go about your business. Just know that if you make a mistake with the select range stuff, you just have to back up past your starting point, so to speak. So like if I tried to go here and I double click here, it's going to give me the whole object. Oops, undo, undo, and then I'll shift click, boom, and then I can keep going. Then if I had these all selected, boom, I could extrude, do something like that. Okay. So that brings us to this one. I don't know if you'll use this today. It was a part of the original assignment before I changed it for this year. But an expand selection, as you can see, I have this band of faces selected here, and then I was able to expand it to the rows above and below it. Hold shift, but this time you'll tap a key on your keyboard. In this case, it's the comma and period keys next to the letter M. Those are your caret keys. So then if I had a face selected here, holding shift, I'm going to tap the period key. You'll see it grows my selection again, grows my selection again. That's it. That's it for today's notes, folks. It's mostly about this. The takeaway from today's lesson, the what, why, how, and now. You folks aren't Dublin kids, so you don't understand why I'd say that. But the main what of today is the edge loop tool. Okay, the selection stuff helps you use that tool in practice. But it's mainly, can you add edge loops and not make a mess, basically. So as people may have seen already, the assignment is up. You're going to be making a simple vase using a cylinder and the edge loop tool. So yesterday was a dice, simple. Today, vase, simple. We're getting ready to do something a little bit more challenging, hopefully Thursday. I think that is the plan. So let's take a look at what I'm asking you to do today. So you're going to take a cylinder. For sake of ease, I'm going to just pull this out of the grid because I don't like working with the grid inside of my objects. So now it's floating up here. Okay, great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch into face mode, and I promise you there is a reason I'm telling you to do this. Don't just skip this step because you're like, whatever. So you're going to want to select these middle faces here, and then I'm going to hold shift and drag over this. We're going to invert our selection. Now I have just the top and bottom selected of my cylinder. Get rid of it. We'll put it back in at the end. We'll come back and add this when we're ready. But for starting your work today, you for sure do not want the edge loop tool. Also, I forgot to mention this on my last period, so if you're watching this from 5th period, hopefully you're seeing this. If you want more subdivisions around your vase to make it smoother, hold on one second, you would want to select your cylinder. Subdivisions axis by default are 20. You could crank it up to 30. You can crank it up to 50. Whatever. It won't really affect it. It'll make the whole thing overall more smooth around, but it's like sort of whatever. Ava, what do you got?
Wait, so how did you delete just the top parts, or the top bar parts?
Switch into face selection mode.
Yeah.
Then I drag a selection through the middle of the object. So I just have these faces selected. Then I hold shift, drag a box over the whole object, and then it'll invert my selection to the top and bottom, and then just backspace to delete it. Yep. So let's say you are now here. The assignment parameters. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, and you do, you'll need to add 10 edge loops at a minimum to this cylinder, and then you're going to shape it into a vase of some kind. So you need to add at least 10 loops, and it does need to kind of look like a vase. So don't just like slap 10 loops on a cylinder and be like, we're done! So what do I mean by it needs to look like a thing? So first I'm going to start with taking my top, and I'll drag this up a little bit, and I'm going to take the bottom, and I'm going to scale this down a little bit. Okay, so we're starting with this shape for my vase. Now I'm going to go grab my insert edge loop tool, and I'm just going to start with adding an edge up here. And so again, you click on the vertical edges. That'll allow you to add the loop. Then you just drag it to where you want it and then let go. And so when you add a loop, it automatically becomes selected. And so I immediately just press R for the scale tool, and I'm going to scale this out a little bit. I'll press G for reuse my last tool. I'll then add another loop. And I'll add this one right here. We'll scale this up slightly. And so this is where you kind of might want to get into your side views even. Here, let me go into that. Let me do that. Because I don't actually need my perspective view for this. So I'm in my side view now. And we'll taper this down a little bit more. G again. You know what? Actually, let me do. We'll do something like this. Then I'll press G again. I'm gonna add one more right here, and then I'll scale this in. So I'm getting a little ridge here. And then I'll come down here, and I'm gonna straighten this out kinda, and I'm just looking at my edges here, looking for the lines to appear straight on the outside. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and add another loop here. Oh, whoops, I wanted to do it above it, sorry. So I'll do that there. I'm gonna switch gears. I'm gonna press Q to get off my insert edge loop tool. I'm gonna switch into face selection mode. Select this face here. Shift double click the face next to it, and that will give me the entire select range all the way around. It's the same as selecting an edge loop, but except for faces. And then I'm just going to quickly do an extrude here. I don't know, 0.03, something small. Cool, now I got a little lip here. You don't need to extrude things. I'm just doing that to be fancy. All right, back to business. So I'll grab that. Mesh tools. Give me 1 second if you have a question out there. Back to adding edge loops. We'll do this. Boom. Again, just add it in. R for scale. Scale this out a little bit. G. Bring in another one down here. And then I'm going to start rapidly tapering this, I guess. Whoops. Yeah, there we go. And then I'll just scale this in a little bit more. So, simple vase. Again, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I'm close actually. You need at least 10. This is not supposed to be the most difficult thing you do all year. So, the thing is, folks, we will, like the snow person, the snow peoples, I'll be collecting the. Did I make a submission thing for it? I didn't last period. Yeah, we'll have to collect those Thursday then, folks. I'm gonna need to collect your snowmen for the competition, the Just for Clout. If you made a cool looking snowman competition, I didn't do it with my 5th period class though, so we'll have to do that on Thursday. But we do want to collect those. But same for this though. We're gonna have if anyone makes a cool vase. I had someone make a really amazing looking teapot in my 5th period, so yeah, this is again to give you, there's enough meat on the bones here for you to show that you learned something in today's lesson, but it's not exceptionally difficult. It's not designed to be exceptionally difficult. That looks hideous. I'll do that. I'll bring this up here. Okay. Go back here. Okay, but you folks get the picture. When you are done, so here's the final steps, folks. So, as I said, you're going to cut the top and bottom off. Real quickly, I want to show you why we're doing that. So I'm going to take another cylinder over here. Now, you cannot cut triangles, okay? If I take edge loop here and I try and cut this, you'll see it terminates at this triangle, right? But by adding a vertex onto this triangle is no longer a triangle. It is a triangle-shaped quadrilateral. So the next time I try and cut an edge in on here, you'll see that it goes across the top of this triangle because it can cut this now. The insert edge loop tool can only cut quadrilaterals. So then, if I were to cut again here, you'll see that now it starts bending back around and down this side. So you can create a quick mess with your geometry if you don't remember that you need to start off by deleting the top and bottom. And so here's how you put them back on once you're done. It's just a simple extrude operation. So let's start with the bottom. I'm just going to add a bottom on here, switch into edge mode. You're going to double click this edge and extrude. And this is not something that we've had in the notes yet, but all you do is you just hit extrude, go to edit mesh immediately, and just hit merge to center, and that will close your hole. So again, from start to finish, double click the edge loop, hit extrude, edit mesh, merge to center. The top one can be slightly more complicated depending on the shape of the top of your vase, but in general, it's about as simple as extrude once, and you're going to create a small lip. I've hit extrude. I'm going to just press R for the regular scale tool, not the extrude local manipulator scale. I'll bring this in slightly. Just create a small lip here at the top. Okay, great. And then I'm going to press G for repeat last because I just extruded. I'll switch to my regular move tool with W. Move it down, and you're probably like, okay, Mr. Meyer, you just pulled it through itself. Then I just scale this in now, so it's inside the object, right? And then, same thing that we did for the bottom again. You're going to extrude one more time, edit mesh, merge to center. And so when you're all done, we'll have a solid base. Thank you for watching the demo. Stop.